The concrete part of our mixture adds all the engineering strength as it mixes in with the wire reinforcement. I'm also using the set square to check that each paver is sitting flat and level compared to the one next to it. After setting the last full-size paver in the corner,
you come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
The latest addition to the back entrance of this house, it was part of a general rehabilitation of this whole back entryway, including relaying these pavers, adding some new custom-made pavers, installing these stone steps on either side of this deck, which were made out of the leftover material of the front entry on the other side.
my first step in this project is to get some measurements of the old pavers and the step area we're going to reconstruct. I like to get the dimensions on paper so I can rough out a concept drawing to help me make a plan.
Our next job is going to be rebuilding this entryway here. We're going to reuse all these old concrete blocks, clean them up, relay them over a concrete foundation. I'll go through all that process as we're doing it. We're going to be building a new step here to replace this log step here. This is going to be built out of concrete block and clad in sandstone. We have a lot of sandstone left over from the previous job on the other side of the house, which was a sandstone pathway and staircase. Similar situation, creating an entryway onto a deck area where it's ergonomic, safe. Today's task is going to be to tidy up this area, remove everything that's unnecessary. We've got to wash and stack all these blocks around the corner. Got a little staging area around there. Then we've got to excavate this whole area and prepare it to relay them. I'm going to be creating a treated timber frame to reset all these concrete blocks. I've already created a concept drawing here with some accurate measurements and help quantify all the materials we're going to need. I always do some kind of rough drawing to help calculate things. It's easy to think about it when you can visualize it. This will create a nice ergonomic and safe entryway into the front of the house.
The first thing I need to do is clear things out of the way so I have access to the concrete block. After removing some of these excess building materials out of the way, I need to deconstruct the log they've been using for a step.
Let's get out, we can leave this city. Let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty, with the wind blowing in your hair. We can look back someday, baby, don't you understand?
The concrete block is coming up easily with my wrecking bar, as it's just laid in sandy dirt. I want to stack them all on a pallet around the side so I can wash them off thoroughly. I'm going to need them clean for when we come to sticking them down later.
Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city light. Hey darling, we could get out of town.
I wouldn't normally use hollow block as pavers, but these pavers have been in place for many years and my client likes them and she wanted to reuse them if possible. So by adding a stable foundation of gravel and concrete, we can make an effective pathway out of these old pavers.
Let's get out, we can leave this city. Let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty.
To avoid double handling heavy materials like this, I've set up a cleaning station right next to where I'm going to stack the cleaned block. The blocks need to be cleaned thoroughly. They've been lying in dirt for quite a long time and some of the dirt has made its way into the hollow part of the block, so I want to blow all this dirt out with the hose. I also want to take care to make sure the outside surface of the block is extra clean, as this will be creating our bond with our mortar onto the concrete foundation later. After the cleaning process, I stack them neatly on a couple of timbers and move on to excavating the dirt in preparation for our concrete foundation. I want the excavation of this dirt to be as accurate as possible. Because we're creating a pathway and a step onto an existing deck area, I use the deck as reference to how much dirt I need to remove to add our gravel foundation and concrete base. The location we're working at is very close to the beach, so the soil here has a lot of sand in it and it's very easy to dig and excavate. I'm using all this excess soil to finish off the pathway we completed on the other side of the house. I set this path at ground height, but the existing ground was uneven, so we have some voids to fill with this excess dirt.
Who told you that you were no good? There's no use in trying, and even if you could, it wouldn't come out like it should.
This project is really a continuation of the previous project, constructing the sandstone pathway, as we're going to be using a lot of the leftover materials. The concrete step is going to be clad in leftover sandstone from the crazy paving on the front, and there's enough gravel and concrete left over to create our foundations.
Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all.
I periodically measure the excavation against the deck with my tape measure. I want to have 600 mil of clearance for where we start our foundation under the deck. As I get close to the depth needed, I'm careful not to over-dig the excavation. I don't want to disturb the natural compaction of the sand. I want this to be as solid as possible for when we put our foundation on it. When I reach the correct depth, I start to smooth out this section with my shovel as reference for the rest of the excavation. With the depth established, I measure out with my tape measure from the deck to where the pathway ends, and mark it with my shovel as a visual reference to where to stop digging. I can now clearly see how much dirt there is left to remove. I'll use this excess dirt to complete the finishing touches on another project we completed on this property. During the construction of the sandstone pathway staircase, I also rebuilt a patio entryway on the back corner of the house. This involved the relaying of second-hand pavers on a raised concrete foundation so it could tie into the pre-existing timber steps onto the deck. Because of the extensive foundation work I did to rehab this patio, I can make good use of this excess soil. By top dressing the exposed gravel, I can enable the grass to grow back flat and even around the whole structure. I finish off this process by wetting the entire area down to help settle the dirt in place and also stimulate the grass to grow back.
Could you hike back to it, fight with it, sit with it? This is a part of it all. Ask around, be aware, make peace with what is there.
The final step in the excavation is to make sure I've got a completely flat and plumb base by referencing it with my levels so we're ready for the next stage of our construction. One of the things to be mindful of when you're excavating around an existing home is to take extra care to not dig through any existing infrastructure that's connected to the house. In this case, there's a water pipe connecting the water tank into the house, which is laying under the front of our pathway. I'm carefully removing some soil along the length of it so it'll sit comfortably under our gravel bed. The final step in this deconstruction will be to remove the two posts that hold up this railing system that's been used as a drying rack for wetsuits when they come back from the beach. We'll be reconstructing a drying rack for them with some more practical materials in the rebuild.
Now everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. Everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it.
The last thing I need to do in my excavation process is relocate this little guy that we disturbed during the digging.
Come closer, dance for me.
I cleared all the old material away and flattened out the dirt so we have a good base to construct the treated timber frame that's going to contain the pavers and our stone step. I'm constructing the frame out of 200mm by 50mm treated timber sleepers. I'm cutting the 4 pieces I need out here in my staging area, but I'll be assembling the frame in place due to its weight when it's all put together. It's important to take a look along the length of the timber to see which pieces are the straightest, and in this case I want to use the straightest pieces for the long parts of the frame. I use my set square to double check the ends of the timber to make sure they're 90 degrees so our frame comes out plumb. This is when the investment of making a drawing with accurate measurements pays off. I'm able to cut all the pieces I need quickly and effectively without wasting any of my material. I always drill pilot holes where I'm fastening the screws to help avoid splitting the timber with the screw. It also helps to make a really accurate and tight join. I've used a clamp to attach one side of my frame to the deck to help support it vertically whilst I assemble the other side.
Daydreamer, kidnap me. Take me back, all the way back to them days. Daydreamer, kidnap me. Have me running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
I'm attaching the corner of our frame aligned to the side of the deck. I check with the tape measure to make sure we've got enough room for the step we'll be adding later. With one end of the frame locked into the appropriate height, I adjust some of the dirt under the frame to create a slight slope for rain runoff. These timbers will create the basic structure that the pathway and step is built inside. After adding a piece of timber that's going to help create the form of the foundation of the step, we start adding our gravel base. The gravel will be about 100 millimeters thick due to the softness of the soil.
As a young girl, it feels we're mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care in the world. I was one rich little girl. Daydreamer, kidnap me. Take me back, all the way back to them days. Running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
To make our concrete foundation extra strong, I'm adding reinforcement mesh into it. I'm cutting down this larger piece of mesh so it fits into the formwork of our foundation. Suspend our reinforcement mesh at the right height inside the concrete. I'm adding heavy timber screws into the treated timber formwork. These screws will give me something to anchor the tie wire to so I can lock the mesh in place and it doesn't move around when we're pouring the concrete. The other purpose of adding these screws into the timber is it's a way of attaching the timber to the concrete. When the concrete sets solid around these screws, it'll make a really solid attachment to the treated timber. I'm getting a measurement for the length of the pieces of reinforcement bar we'll be using to anchor the foundation into our hollow concrete block. Once I've cut the first one to size, I use it as a template to cut the other 6 pieces we're going to need. I need to make some reference marks on the timber so I know where to place the pieces of reinforcement bar we just cut. I want them to end up in the center of the hollow concrete block. By calculating where the edge of the blocks will be sitting in the construction, I can mark an X spot for the center position, and I'll be able to follow this later when we're pouring our foundation. Setting these pieces of rebar deep into our concrete foundation is what's going to create the engineering strength to keep our step attached firmly to the ground. As I finish marking out the pattern for our concrete block, little Gus, the resident dachshund, comes outside to check in with me.
Be still, won't waste another tear.
It's always good to take a little break and get present before we move on to our next task.
I'm all prepped to do my foundation pour for this stone-clad step we're going to be putting here that goes up to this deck area. I just wanted to explain what's going on with these posts. This is for a wetsuit drying rack, and later we'll be installing a nice piece of steel pipe along here. And because it's under the eaves of the house, it's a really good spot for drying wetsuits and beach towels because we're right next to the beach here. We have to do a concrete pour, so that's why I did the setup, because whilst I'm pouring my foundation out, I wanted to get this concrete in to make the most of getting my concrete mixer all messy. Might as well get 2 pours instead of 1. We'll get some concrete in this end. I've got bracing timber here to support this in exactly the plumb position. I didn't want to put any holes in it, so I've drilled a hole where the bracket's going to go on. Where I've attached this bracing screw is going to be the same place where the bracket goes on with a steel pipe that goes across. So when we remove all this bracing timber and put the bracket on, there won't be any additional holes in this timber.
Concrete can be mixed in many different ratios depending on how hard you want it to be when it sets up. For this project, I'm mixing 6 parts of gravel sand mix to 1 part Portland cement. By adding everything in small amounts relatively slowly, it gives a chance for the ingredients to mix properly with the water. When I'm satisfied the concrete's at the right consistency, I dump it out into my wheelbarrow for transportation to where we're going to be pouring our foundation.
But there's some words that I just wanna say, to put it all straight before this night turns into day, and then I'm on my way. Yes, I'm on my way.
Concrete can stiffen quite quickly, so it's really important to continue agitating the mix as we add more batches. Here I'm using my trowel to push the concrete through the bottom of the rebar mesh and into the corners of our formwork. I added a plywood ramp to assist me in getting the wheelbarrow full of concrete into the right spot for when we dump it.
A bit naive and so eager to please. You know I played for love, but it got me on my knees.
By tapping the formwork with a hammer, this creates a vibration that'll help the concrete settle into all the corners of the forms. As the concrete fills close to the top of our formwork, it's more practical for me to pour the concrete in from tubs than to use my wheelbarrow. I want to avoid overflowing the concrete and creating a mess. I'm using a sponge to wipe clean the formwork where we put our pencil marks to align our rebar that's going to support the hollow concrete block. Agitating the rebar as I insert it in the concrete will help the concrete bond to it. Here you can see how I'm using the pencil marks to align the rebar in the right position. I complete this process by double checking with my tape measure that all the rebar is sitting at the right height and aligned with our pencil marks. With the foundation for the sandstone step complete, we're now going to move on to pouring the concrete in the foundation for the wetsuit rack post.
Quiet voices in the night. Time is running out of sight. Lonely wind is passing by.
The reason this post hole is so elongated is it doubles as a small retaining wall to help support the slope on the side of the pathway.
Walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see.
I'm adding adding crushed bluestone to the top of this foundation to help it blend in with our finished pathway. I'll be using the same material in between the gaps of our pavers. While waiting for the concrete to set up, we're going to prep our hollow concrete block.
Making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see.
I'm using my grinder with a diamond bit to cut notches in both sides of the hollow block. This is where a piece of rebar will be fitted in later when we construct the stairs.
Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. There's no one left but you and me.
It's important to wash and dampen our bricks and foundation before we start using our mortar. I'm test fitting the piece of rebar that's going to fit in the notches of the hollow block. The middle gust seems to approve. The system I'm using to construct this step is to lay the hollow block on 5mm packers. This gives me a chance to adjust the packers so I can get the block completely level. It's also going to create a gap for the mortar to squeeze between and help adhere the block to the foundation. After leveling the block by adjusting the packers, I double check that it's set back 25mm from the edge of our foundation. I'll need this 25mm setback later for when it comes to the process of adding the stone to the concrete block. With the first block in the appropriate place, I repeat the process with the other 6 blocks, using the pencil marks I put on the timber earlier as a guide.
Hey darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Hey darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now.
With our hollow block positioned correctly, we're now going to fill them with mortar and concrete. I use the mortar to create a bond with the bottom of the hollow block to the top of the concrete foundation. Because of its soft and smooth consistency, I can push it under the 5mm gap we created with our packers. By adding this mortar to the inside void of the block and agitating it around with my trowel, I push it out through the bottom seam we created with the 5mm packers to create a bond between our foundation and the block.
Let's get out, we can leave this city. Let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty, with the wind blowing in your hair.
With the mortar acting like a glue at the base of the block, I now add concrete to fill all the voids and in between the blocks. I'm adding the concrete in layers and agitating each layer in before I add the next layer on top. It's important to constantly keep working the concrete, as this will avoid any air voids in our step when it's completed. As the blocks fill with concrete, I make sure to start adding concrete into the gaps between the blocks as well. I'm paying extra attention to fill concrete around the notches we cut earlier in preparation for the piece of rebar we're going to be adding at the last stage. Here you can see how the vertical pieces of rebar we added into our foundation are perfectly centered in our hollow block.
Daydreamer, kidnap me. Take me back, all the way back to them days. Running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
When the concrete dries, we'll be able to start the process of cladding the step in sandstone. I first need to construct the concrete step on the other side of this deck entryway, as I want to clad both these steps at the same time for efficiency. Because of the soft nature of the sandy soil we're building on, I want to excavate quite a deep foundation for this step. A small step like this needs a lot of masonry mass to keep it stable in the future. I double check the measurement of the hole we've dug to make sure it's big enough for the foundation that's going to support this step. To start the construction of our formwork, I'm going to fix a level beam across the stumps of the existing deck platform. I want to make sure this beam is completely level, as I'll be building the rest of the formwork underneath it, and this will establish the level of the step. This is a fiddly formwork to construct due to the limited access with the deck and the hot water heater right on the corner of our step. So I prefab some of the elements and install them in place.
No mistake ever kept me late. We spent summers catching fireflies and winters on our skates. One big smile across my face. We used to dance our way to church on Sundays. Mama set the pace.
I add gravel under all my concrete foundations. The thickness and type of the gravel depends on the soil we're building on. And in this case, with the soft sandy soil, I want an extra heavy, thick gravel base. Sometimes when I'm pouring foundations, I integrate recycled concrete chunks into the bottom of the concrete base. This is to help add more masonry mass to the system, which will help our stability later on. I spread out a layer of wet concrete in the bottom of our form and then add the recycled concrete pieces on top. I then top it off with another wet layer of concrete. This will bind all the recycled pieces together in one mass.
We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care in the world. I was one rich little girl, daydreamer, kidnapped me. Take me back, all the way back to them days, running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
By using an accelerating agent in the concrete mix, this slab is ready to build on the next day. After the concrete block are laid out on the slab, centering the voids on our pieces of vertical rebar, the next critical part of the process is setting the height of the blocks in relation to the existing deck. After confirming that 15mm of packers will get us to the right height, I do one last double check with my level to make sure we're setting the blocks plumb. I add the mortar mix, making sure that I agitate it through the bottom of the block to create a really good adhesion. This will help hold it solid whilst we add the concrete later. After allowing the mortar to set solid, we fill the steps with concrete and add our rebar just like we did in the first step, in preparation for the cladding of the sandstone. I'll be completing the construction of this drying rack before returning my attention to the sandstone steps. With the concrete foundation set solid, I remove the bracing I put in place to keep the posts level and plumb. I remove the formwork for the foundation so I can see how the concrete came out. This post foundation doubles up as a small retaining wall to help manage the slight slope we have in the sand under our pathway. I can see here that the concrete foundation has come out nice and solid. I brush off the excess bluestone chips that I added to the top of the slab to see how it's turned out. This texture is going to match some of the elements that'll be in the finished pathway. After a little backfilling of sand to tidy up the area, I move on to the installation of the steel pole that's going to form the basis of our wetsuit drying rack. I measure and mark out the holes for the bracket that'll be holding the steel pole in place. I'm using hexagonal roofing screws as they're designed to securely hold sheet metal into timber.
Even if you never fall before, you can take a chance and try once more. Don't let your worries weigh you down. You can
After adjusting it to be symmetrical with the posts, I lock the screws in tight so it won't move around, and then test it out with one of my cleanup towels. With this side project complete, I'm now going to take an inventory of our sandstone supply for cladding these 2 steps. I created a stockpile of offcuts on this pallet that were leftover pieces of stone from the previous project, where we created a sandstone pathway for the entry at the front of the house. The idea was to load my wheelbarrow up with a batch of stone and transport it to where my wet saw is set up so we can cut some test pieces.
Don't let your worries weigh you down, down, down. You can still take flight, although you're earthbound.
I'm using my wet saw to cut some sandstone test bricklets to see what sort of configuration I can come up with to create an appropriate pattern for the cladding of these sandstone steps. After coming up with an appropriate tile size I can generate from our scrap material, I go test fit it on the step. To help manage our limited supply of stone offcuts, I'm starting with a smaller step first. My plan was to have a pattern of 3 pieces of stone across the step. I cut them slightly oversized. This way I can visualize how the stones are going to look on the step. By measuring the step and the pieces and using my calculator, I can come up with a size to create a symmetrical layout. I add some pencil marks on the stones for reference when I trim them on the wet saw. Then return them in place and double check that they fit.
But there's some words that I just wanna hear you say, to put it all straight before this night turns into day, and then I'm on my way. Yeah. Yes, I'm on my way.
I'm now ready to attach the stone to the concrete step. I'll be using a tile adhesive and adding some pigment in it so it helps match the colour of the sandstone. The tile cement product I'm using on this project is called Ceramicrete. Whenever I'm adding pigment to a mortar mix, I start with an extra wet mix. This is to allow the colour of the pigment to blend evenly throughout the mixture. After I'm satisfied the way the colour's turning out, I add more of the dry Ceramicrete mixture to stiffen up the mix so it's more appropriate for sticking the tiles onto the concrete. I finish the process off by using my trowel and mixing it by hand so I can feel the consistency of the material. Wetting down the concrete and the sandstone is a critical part of the process. It helps the tile adhesive stick to the concrete and the stone. It also slows down the drying process, so giving us more time to work and adjust our tiles later. I'm using a paint scraper to apply the tile adhesive to the concrete foundation. I'm pushing it firmly into the texture of the concrete so we get a really good adhesion with our stone. Once I've built up a layer of about 5 mil of material, I scrape off the excess with my tile rake. This creates ridges of the tile cement that'll be part of the process of the stone sticking down later. Part of the system of creating a really good adhesion between the stone and the concrete is to have both materials buttered with the tile cement. The sandstone product we're using has special ridges engineered in the back of it. I'm pushing the tile cement into these grooves with my paint scraper and creating a layer about 5 mil thick. I want to apply slightly more tile cement than we need, so when I push it in place, some of it oozes out the sides. I clean up the edges with my spatula and then repeat the process with the next bricklet.
A bit naive and so eager to please. You know I played for love, but it got me on my knees. Now's the time to reap what I've sown. Your words echoing in every single bone. Underwater and so far out at sea, there's no cure for what you're telling me, and soon I'm on my way. Yes, I'm on my way.
It's It's really important to clean as much of the excess tile cement off whilst it's still soft. This completes the first course on the small step. I'll allow these bricks to set solid before we add any more stone on top. Before moving on to the construction of the next step, I'm going to take a break and check out the koalas that have been quite active in the front of the garden today.
Breaking feedback, unless I'm gonna stay right here, stay until it disappears.
I find it important to take a break and quieten my mind in the middle of the day. This property I'm working on has 2 acres of beautiful gardens with lots of wildlife and plants to meditate on in my daily break.
Be still, won't waste another tear. Wait till it disappears. Can I go to sleep?
To clad our largest step with sandstone, I'm using the same process I did earlier for the small step. But this time I'm cutting larger tile bricklets out of the sandstone offcuts. I'll need 4 pieces of sandstone to cover the larger step. These will be cut oversized like we did earlier. I'll test them in place and then we'll trim them to size later.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free.
I'm satisfied the 4 pieces of stone we've cut will work nicely for the first course of this step. I do some calculations to work out what length these bricklets are going to have to be. I'm also taking into consideration which part of the stone to keep and which end to cut off, as this stone cladding is purely for aesthetics. After cutting the first bricklet to size, I return it in place and set the next bricklet next to it so I can scribe the mark. This is the most accurate way for me to end up with a really tight coverage of these bricks. I work my way along the step, custom cutting each bricklet in place until all 4 bricklets fit nice and tight along the whole step.
Without a care in the world, I was one rich little girl. Daydreamer, kidnap me. Take me back, all the way back to them days. Running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
With all our sandstone pieces cut to size, I'm ready to stick them on the concrete. But first I have to say hello to my little friend Gus, who comes and checks in on me periodically throughout the day. After preparing a batch of ceramicrete with sandstone pigment, I wet the whole area down and move all the sandstone pieces to the top of the step so I can keep track of their placement. I add a 5mm layer of the ceramicrete across the entire concrete foundation and then scrape the excess off with my tile rake. This is the standard process for me cladding stone to concrete. I use my sponge to dampen down the sandstone. Often in dry conditions you have to keep re-wetting the materials through the process as they dry out. It's important to check the sandstone bricklet is sitting level on the step. I gently use the hammer to adjust it into plumb and then move on to the next bricklet. Here you can see the temporary piece of timber I added as a straight edge that all the tile bricklets are sitting on top of as we lay them. This is going to ensure a completely flat and plumb alignment of the bricks. If there are any voids on the edges of the brick, I fill them with my spatula so we have a really solid contact onto the concrete.
Every step, every breath, for you, my head's up over the clouds. For you, if there's a valley, I'd build a bridge so that you could get by. Or I'd grow wings so we could fly. Daydreaming is my new middle name. This is not a game for
to set up solid before continuing the next row of stone. In the meantime, I'm going to return my attention to the smaller step. I calculate the height of the bricklets by measuring from the deck to a piece of stone that simulates the top piece of our step. I want to come up with a symmetrical pattern, so by experimenting with the layout, I come up with a pattern that'll give us the coverage we need. Once all the bricklets are cut to size, I stick them on with the pigmented ceramicrete in the same process we used earlier. With the second course complete on the small step, I return my attention to our larger step and repeat the process.
But there's no guarantee in life. No, we just have to wait and see.
I want to focus on when putting the second course on our step. Having a thick enough bed of our tile cement on the concrete foundation so the stone bricklets can sit in a flat plane with the previous laid course. I use the small level to check the bricklets aligned with the one underneath and sitting completely vertical. I also want to fill any small gaps we have with the pigmented tile cement. This is why I added the sandstone pigment, so it'll help blend with the stone bricklets. I wash off any excess of the tile cement with my wet sponge. The weather's quite warm today, so the tile cement can set quite quickly. I continue the process of nudging each bricklet tightly to the previous one until I've completed the whole step.
Peel off a layer and breathe. Lift up your head and lead. Count the stars up before you leave. Save a kiss pretty please. Try to reminisce over me. Know that I will cherish your memory.
With the side of our steps complete, the next part of the process is to clad the tops. There wasn't enough scrap stone material for the top of the steps, so I've purchased a few new pieces, which I'm laying out on the pallet next to the wet saw, so we can come up with a pattern that's going to look good and give us the right coverage. I start this process by remeasuring both steps. This way I can calculate how to rough cut the stone into rectangles so we can fit them in place. I select an appropriate piece of stone, mark out a rectangle with my pencil and cut 3 sides of it on the wet saw, and then place it on the top of our step to see how it fits. By having the piece of stone cut oversized, I'm able to adjust it in position and then scribe the edges we need to cut off the existing step. This is going to result in a much more accurate fit.
Turn around and show your face. Let me see parts of you. Oh my, our bodies interlace, slow and easy. And I can reach you from a distance. I can, so beautiful. I can hear you within the silence. Ooh, we will dance away the gloomy days right here. We are silver line, one of a kind, you and me.
The stone we clad on the side of our step has had all weekend to set up, so it's solid enough for me to remove this temporary form we had under the bottom edge of the stones. The void here we've created under the step is part of the engineering system that's going to help bind the step to the pavers that we'll be adding later. This will stop them separating and changing in height over time.
Last week we got all the stone cut and stuck on. We selected and cut all the stone for the top. I didn't stick them on last Friday because the weather was too warm. And sometimes in really hot weather the cement stiffens up too quickly. And it can really work against you when you're trying to get these stones seated exactly the right height. So we've come back today to stick these on. Our step height's going to be 190. So by checking here, I can see I've got about 5 mil to play with. I'll be using these packers to pack these stones up to get it as close to 190 as we can to the top of this decking step, and also give it a little bit of a slope forward so it drains off on the front side. Because later on we'll be laying our pavers right up to the edge of this stone step, and they'll be 190 from there. So it'll be 190, 190.
The main reason for this project was to create an ergonomic and safe step up onto this deck platform. The previous stair system was very uneven and unsafe, so it's worth going to extra trouble to make sure these two steps are exactly the same height. One of the ways of setting horizontal stones to an exact height is to use plastic packers underneath. I start the process by using 10mm packers underneath the stone. I then check it with my set square and small level. From there I can see how many millimeters I need to adjust it by. So I swap out the black 10mm packers for smaller packers. Each time I adjust the height, I double check with my set square and level to see if I've got it any closer to where I want it to be. I keep swapping out the different size packers until I get the stone to the exact height that I need. I've set this stone to the correct level, but the edge of the stone needs a little bit of material removed. I've had to cut a bevel along the edge of these stones because of the rough backing on them. This stone needs a couple of mil ground off to fit really snugly. I use my grinder with a diamond tipped bit to take a couple more mil off the bevel I'd already put in the edge of the stone. I return it to its position and do one last double check with my level. With this first piece fitting nicely, we're ready to stick it in place with our tile cement.
Yesterday there was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane. And as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise. And now there's something in the air and a sparkly shimmer on our skin, restoring everything within.
After double checking that our stone is sitting at the correct height, I start adding the tile cement. I want to lock in the packers in their original positions. I stick them down with the tile cement to secure them so I won't bump them out of alignment when we put the stone on top of the step. I keep adding more tile cement until I have it slightly higher than the packers. I apply an extra thick layer of tile cement on the back of the stone and then rake the excess off with the tile rake. When I set the stone in place, I know if I've got enough tile cement underneath, because some of it'll ooze out the sides. I use my paint scraper and wet sponge to clean off any excess and then move on to setting the next stone.
Undercover agents of the other, beyond gravel, beyond all. Hand in hand, building castles out of sand, reaching for the grand. As willows align, we lose track of time. Head up high, now we climb.
I continue to check that I'm putting a very slight slope on these stones for rain drainage. By checking the bubble in my small level, I can see I've set a very slight angle that'll appear flat, but create enough of a slope for water to run off.
9 to 5 was my dad's advice. Don't think twice. luxury life. My beauty can lose it, I'll use it. I'll take what I want. Oh yeah. A whole lot of taking, but not enough time. A whole lot of work for a trophy wife like me.
This completes the process of our sandstone-clad concrete step. I then repeated the process on the smaller step on the other side of our deck. We're now ready to continue our process by adding the recycled pathway that attached to the front step.
We've got our sandstone cladding finished this morning, so we're going to move on to paving this area here. Got a bunch of our recycled paving blocks all cleaned up and ready to go over here. Cleaned up some of the edges on them. We've also put down this chicken wire as a way to reinforce the concrete once it sets up. I've constructed a special screeding tool. This is to set the level of our concrete. The plan is to mix up a special mixture of dry concrete and mortar mix in my cement mixer. Then we'll be dumping it out here, screeding it out smooth with this tool and laying these pavers on top. This chicken wire will be suspended amongst the dry concrete. When it sets up, it'll help tie it all together. And after a few days, it'll be hard enough to walk on.
To get our process started, I'm combining bags of concrete with bags of mortar mix, adding them into my cement mixer without any water. We're making a dry cement mix. I'm using a ratio of 2/3 concrete to 1/3 mortar. This will give me a consistency that'll make it easy to make a really flat surface for our pavers to lay on. One of the advantages of using a dry concrete base to lay your pavers on is it saves a lot of time. A disadvantage with this process is the grey concrete mix can stain the top of the pavers, but as we're using grey concrete pavers in this project, that's not going to be an issue. My goal is to create a 75mm thick base of concrete that'll lay underneath the pavers, creating a solid foundation. The screeder that I made is being used as an indicator to let me know when I've added enough concrete mix to start the screeding process. Dragging the screeder back and forth across the concrete mix will help smooth it out and set it to the correct height for what we'll be laying the pavers on. As I work the screeder back and forth, it flattens out the high points and shows up voids where there are low points. I add more of the mixture into these voids and continue the process of pushing the screeder back and forth until I get a unified flat surface.
When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know what has been has been. There's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back.
When I'm satisfied the concrete mortar mix is flat and compacted, I start adding the pavers on top. I'm placing the pavers as gently as possible as to not disturb our dry mix underneath them. I use my set square to check that I've got a 30mm gap along the edge of the paver. I also have pencil marks on top of the screeder that work as indicators to align the pavers with the right gap. When I'm satisfied this first paver is aligned correctly, I add a half-size paver next to it, as this is going to establish our brick pattern for the layout. I then repeat the process till I reach the other side of the pathway.
There's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back. You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. When the wind blows.
When the first row of pavers is set in place, I prepare for the next row by adding a little more mortar mix and screeding it flat. I work in sections defined by the length of the pavers. Here you can see how I'm using the screeder as a straight edge that I use to keep the pavers aligned and parallel in our pattern. After completing the second row, I double check with my tape measure that they're all lining up parallel to the stone step. The third and last row is added before I start the process of filling our dry concrete mortar mix in between the gaps of the pavers. This is going to help create a really solid attachment between the pavers and the concrete base. Using my large and small trowel and the broom, I continue to fill the gaps until they're about halfway to the top. My plan was to complete the first half of our paving today and finish off the second half tomorrow. So once I've filled enough sand between the gaps of our pavers, I wet the whole thing down, then we let it set up overnight before we continue the next morning.
Give me tears so I can cry. And give me life so I don't die. Give me tears so I can cry. And give me life so I don't die.
I scrape out some of the concrete mortar base we put in yesterday. It still hasn't set up completely, so it's soft enough for me to scrape it out with this trowel so I can make room for the fresh base we're going to be adding for the continuation of the pathway today. I'm slightly changing my system for the second half of the pathway. I'm not going to be pre-mixing the material in the mixer as it creates too much dust in the air. Instead, I'm pouring it directly out of the bags into our base area and then gently spreading it around with my shovel. Because of our 2-to-1 ratio, I'm emptying 2 bags of concrete first and then adding 1 bag of the mortar on top. The concrete part of our mixture adds all the engineering strength as it mixes in with the wire reinforcement. The mortar is to allow for a really flat, smooth surface on the top of our base, so the pavers will sit really flat and level. You can see here how the mortar flattens out really easily with the screeder sitting on top of our concrete base. After creating a firm, flat area for reference, I fill out the pieces in between the pavers with my trowel so they match the rest of the flat surface.
Out where time seems to fade, where your maps are no good, trade your money for rest, learn to master your mind. Mud on your boots tell the story of where you've been. Travel, beat up, warning with settled soul. Trust your gut, you have earned at least that. Age has proven to be kind. Age has proven to be kind.
As the pattern reaches the end of our treated timber frame, I take extra care to check that our gaps are a consistent 30mm. I'm also using the set square to check that each paver is sitting flat and level compared to the one next to it. After setting the last full-size paver in the corner, I move on to setting the 3 half-size pavers to finish off our pattern.
Mud on your boots tell the story of where you've been. Travel, beat up, warning with settled soul. Trust your gut, you have earned at least that. Age has proven to be kind. Age has proven to be kind.
I give the dry concrete mix under our paving blocks a day to set up solidly before I move on to the next stage of filling the courses between the blocks. The sandstone we use to clad the concrete step with is very porous and can stain easily, so I'm wrapping the whole step in silver tape to protect it from the mixture we'll be using to fill in between our paving blocks. The tape will also help create a really sharp edge between the dark bluestone mix we'll be adding and the lighter sandstone step. I use a couple of towels to protect the top of the step, and little Gus checks in on me to see how the project's coming along. This is how the step and pathway look after we've finished the process of filling the gaps. I have all the ingredients for our fill lined up next to my cement mixer in the driveway next to our project. Portland cement will be the agent that binds all these ingredients together. The cement needs to be sifted to remove any lumps, as this will be another dry mix, and without water in the mixture, I need to remove all the lumps beforehand. The other ingredients we'll be using in the mixture is bluestone dust, small granite chips, mortar mix, and black pigment to give it a darker colour. I combine all these ingredients in my cement mixer and then add the black pigment until I get it looking dark enough.
Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold. No matter what I do, I'm coming home to you. And I don't know why, don't know why, don't know why I'm always feeling homesick. Oh, all I know is this is where my heart is.
I've set myself up to start in the top right corner and work my way down the pathway. The middle Gus looks like he wants to get in on the action. The idea is to fill the gaps with our mixture to slightly under the top of the paver surface. This is going to help with the drainage so water can run inside the courses and drain off the pathway. I'm using a combination of my trowel and a small broom to work the mixture deep into the gaps and remove any air that might be in there, working slowly to avoid any unnecessary spills.
'Cause the thing is, I've got more love here than I can bear. Ooh. Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold. No matter what I do, I'm coming home to you. And I don't know why, don't know why, don't know why I'm always feeling homesick.
By gently sweeping back and forth with my small brush, I can compact the mixture to the right height. It's a good opportunity to slow down and enjoy the process. We've done a lot of work to get to this stage, and this is the final step on completing the path.
Breaking feedback, unless I'm gonna stay right here, stay till it disappears.
The recipe for our filler mixture can vary depending on the texture and colour you want to achieve. The only critical part of the recipe is to not have less than 1/6 Portland cement. The Portland cement is the glue that holds all the other ingredients together. The mixture needs to be strong enough to not wash away and hold up over time.
One way, gonna lay down, be still, won't waste another tear. Wait till it disappears.
I finish off this process by wetting the entire pathway down. I'm careful to have my hose set on a misting setting as I want to gently soak the pathway and not wash any of our material out. I give this a few days to set solidly before I let anyone walk on it.
If you have love, you wanna give me some, and I will wait for someone else to come. Oh, it's sad, but it feels right. Are we just hallucinating?
leaving that mortar for a couple of days to firm up, we're able to soak it a bit more thoroughly now. And over the next week, it'll just harden up even more.
This completes the relaying of the concrete blocks as pavers. My client wanted to extend the pathway with some existing 400mm pavers she'd used in the same place previously.
We've got our handmade custom pavers mixed with the store-bought pavers. We've got 8 of these store-bought ones mixed with 6 of these ones we made ourselves. We had a lot of fun making those with the local plants in this beautiful garden that's on this property. It creates an artificial fossil in this concrete. I added some pigment, so these are sandstone colour. Got a couple of red ones. I filled all the gaps with crushed bluestone. This is going to help keep these stable because they're just laid on normal sand. It came out really nice.
I'll take you through the process of how we created our artificial plant fossils in 400mm concrete pavers. One of my concrete form panels will make a good base to construct the mould. I'm using my saw to square one end of it up. We want these pavers to come out dead square so they match the pre-existing factory pavers. The resident ducks and Gus likes to get involved when he hears some activity out the front of the house. The form panel is made out of plywood backed with a 2x4 frame, so it'll be strong enough to support the concrete when we pour the moulds for our 400mm pavers. The pre-existing pavers are 40mm thick, so I'm setting the edge of our mould to 45mm to give me a bit of extra play. I need the mould to be easy to pull apart and reassemble, as we'll be doing a couple of castings to get the amount of pavers we need. I'm constructing it with 2 main side rails with a couple of pieces in the middle to divide up the 3 pavers.
Even if you've never flown before, you can take a chance and try once more. Don't let your worries weigh you down, down, down. You can still take flight, although you're earthbound.
My mould's now complete and ready to make 3 pavers at a time. I use my spirit level to check that it's completely level and use a few scrap pieces of plywood to chock it up in place. I'm making a specialised concrete mix for these pavers, starting with my basic gravel and sand mix. After adding a little bit of water, I add the general purpose cement, being careful to add it slowly so it has time to mix and bind with the gravel and sand. I add mortar mix to give it a smoother texture and a shovel load of rapid set to help speed up the curing process. I add the rest of the gravel and sand mix and water it down to get a smooth consistency, then start adding the pigment. I just keep adding pigment until I get the colour I like by eye. I give the mix some time to blend thoroughly with all the different ingredients. Once it's thoroughly mixed, I dump it into one of my tubs, ready to add the concrete into our mould. My client has carefully selected and laid out all the leaves ready for our process.
Stuck in the dust of the life that you found, with nowhere to go, no higher ground. Even if you've never flown before, you can take a chance and try once more. Don't let your worries weigh you down, down, down. You can still take flight, although you're earthbound.
Our final step is to carefully push leaves and flowers into the top of the pavers. This way, when we check the moulds later, we'll have 2 choices for each paver. We need to add the leaves and flowers whilst the concrete's still soft. The quickcrete I added into our mix speeds the whole drying process up, so we have to work carefully but also quickly. The reason I added the quickcrete was so I could pop these pavers out the next day and set another batch. By peeling some of our leaves off and feeling the concrete underneath, I can tell it's hard enough for us to pull our pavers out of our mould. Most of the leaves are peeling straight out of the concrete. For some of them I have to use a paint scraper to help separate them from the surface.
Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. Tired snowflakes are coming down, collapse into water when they hit the ground.
After checking that Gus's paw prints came out okay, I start deconstructing our mould. I carefully remove the dozen screws we used, as I'll have to reassemble this for our second batch of pavers.
I can promise you're the only thing I see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
The paver came out of the mould nicely. The bottom side of the paver where we poured concrete over the top of the leaves is going to take a little extra work to dig the leaves out. The paint scraper helps me get underneath the leaf and get it started, and then they pull out relatively easily.
Lonely wind is passing by, tries to carry all the whispers that it finds. The walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
I lightly grind both sides of the paver with a diamond bit on my grinder, and then bevel the edges so it matches the factory pavers.
Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see.
Yesterday I pulled out our first batch, which is sitting over here drying in the sun, and I poured out a couple more. These are actually sandstone colour on the bottom and red brick on top, so we'll have the option to use them one way or the other when we lay out our pattern. We've been using the natural plants that are planted around here. My customer's an avid gardener and she's planted all these amazing Australian native plants all through this large 2-acre garden. So I've used some of those to create these moulds for what's kind of like an artificial fossil pattern you end up on your concrete. I'll be pulling these plants out today and deconstructing the mould, and we'll take a look at how they came out. We'll be laying those out just in front of the entryway we created around the back of the house here. So let's pull this mould apart. It's always exciting when you pull apart a concrete mould and see how things have turned out.
Turn around and show your face. Let me see parts of you. Oh my, our bodies interlace, slow and easy. And I can reach you from a distance. I can, so beautiful. I can hear you within the silence. Ooh. We will dance away the gloomy days right here. We are silver line, one of a kind, you and me.
batch of pavers has come out a little different from the first batch. When I poured the sandstone coloured concrete on the bottom of the mould, it was probably too wet for the process, so the leaves have ended up buried deeper in the concrete. I'm going to use my grinder to take off a few mil, then I can dig them out with my paint scraper and chisel. I take my time with this process, working slowly and carefully, trying not to scratch the leaf imprint on the concrete. It's only the edges of the leaves that are trapped in the concrete, so by using my chisel to chip away at the edges, the leaves eventually peel out. The advantage of having the leaves set this deep in the concrete is there'll be no risk of them being ground out by the foot traffic as people walk on these pavers over the years. Custom pavers set solid and cleaned up, we're ready to start laying them at the entryway. The location of the property I'm working on is right next to the beach. The soil is mostly sand, so it makes a reasonable surface to lay pavers directly on without any kind of foundation. I use my rake to get the surface to the correct height. I need to leave 40 mil for the thickness of the pavers. I temporarily place one of the pavers in the corner to test the height of the sand. When I'm satisfied the sand is at the correct height, I use a 2x4 to compact and smooth the sand out in preparation for us laying our pavers on top. I work the entire area of the pathway, removing any bumps and filling any voids with my trowel as I go. I start the process by laying the first paver in the top right corner and working my way across. This way I won't have to walk on the pavers I've laid. I use my trowel to make any adjustments to the height of the sand, so each paver sits flat to the one next to it.
Hey darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Hey darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far. Let's get out, we can leave this city, let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty, with the wind blowing in your hair. We can look back someday, baby, don't you understand that we only get one life? I wanna make it count, honey, come on now and take my hand.
When I'm finished laying all the pavers flat, I do one last double check on the gaps between them and make sure they're all lined up and consistent. I'm using ground bluestone to fill in between the pavers, as that's what we used on the previous pathway we constructed. It'll help add an element of stability for these pavers laid directly on sand. After sweeping all the bluestone into our gaps, I wet the whole thing down to help solidify it into the ground.
Peel off a layer and breathe, lift up your head and lead, count the stars before you leave. Save a kiss, pretty please. Try to reminisce over me. Know that I will cherish your memory.
as the custom-made pavers laid on sand. Join me in the next episode as we move on to some carpentry to complete the rebuild of the awning that covers the back door over our paving projects.